Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm not going to talk about the proposed delivery or the intended delivery of depleted uranium ammunition by Britain to Ukraine and the response of Russia that goes with it. So if you are interested, please continue watching. Hi, welcome back. Well, on Tuesday, the 21st of March this year, Annabel Goldie, the UK Minister of State for Defence, has confirmed that Britain will send depleted uranium ammunition together with their Challenger 2 tanks to Ukraine because they believe those are effective weapons in terms of anti-tank or counter-tank battles. And naturally, Russia has to react. And there is now sort of an escalation in that respect. What I don't understand is that the UK is saying it, well, let's first start off with what Putin has said. Putin has warned that Moscow would be forced to react if the United Kingdom provides Ukraine with armor-piercing tank ammunition that contains depleted ammunition. And his argument is basically that if all this happens, Russia will have to respond accordingly, given that the West collectively is already beginning to use weapons with nuclear components. Well, again, the British say Putin is making a big issue about this, and that the depleted uranium is only a byproduct of nuclear enriching process used to make nuclear fuel, and that it is not a nuclear material, and basically is not part of any nuclear armament that is given. And that this is effectively harmless and has been given, or have been used for several years, or actually now decades, because it was first used in the Yugoslavian war, and then later on in Iraq, Afghanistan, and I believe Libya as well. And I know when I followed those wars and so on, they were already talked as these things were toxic and increased cancer rates and so on. But Britain and America has always refused that type of, or to acknowledge this side effect of the Ukrainian ammunition. But it is several years later now, and we now know what the side effects are, or what the effect is of depleted uranium on any battlefield, and that it contaminates the environment and has a very severe impact on the local population as well as soldiers. A lot of actually American soldiers, I think in the Gulf War, got cancer, and again, the American army never wanted to recognize it of the cause for it. But the United Nations Environmental Program has described such ammunition as chemically and radiologically toxic heavy metal. And the benefit of uranium, of depleted uranium, to a projectile for an anti-tank ammunition is that it is very heavy, and it is usually used as a penetrator mechanism. That means a heavy, high-speed projectile that is very hard, has a high kinetic energy, and that is supposed to penetrate the armor of any tank and so forth. And that is true. But you don't only get it in that, you get it also in smaller ammunitions, for smaller, and like a 20 millimeter or 30 millimeters. Then you also get it onto aircrafts and aircraft ammunition to pierce armor. especially when you do anti-armor operations by helicopters, etc. So it's not only used in anti-tank weapons. And the way that I understand it is that, well, we all know that uranium has various types of. Some of them are radioactive, some of them are not radioactive. And if you mine uranium, then only you have to separate the radioactive uranium molecules or atoms from the non-radioactive uranium, and you do it by centrifugals. And if you know something about the process that Iran is following, then you should be more or less aware of how it is done. Centrifugal action is the radioactive one is more heavier than the normal one, and then by centrifugal forces, the more heavier uranium atoms are pushed to the outer wall where they are collected, and the rest is the lighter version, the non-radioactive versions are are then collected, and the two are separated. The problem is that no process is 100% perfect. So the supposed to be non-radioactive atoms are then used in these missiles or in these penetrator ammunition. But no process is totally perfect. So you will always have some radioactive atoms still residing in this so-called depleted uranium material. So for the UK or America to state that these things are not radioactive is a scientific lie, if you want to call it. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. The results or the experience and the data of this use of ammunition is now sufficient to make a conclusion. And the city that's actually the worst off is in Iraq, and that is a city of Fallujah, where enormous amounts of depleted uranium has been used, and where there is a huge increase in cancer, deformed babies, abortive babies. That's actually very terrible. In any case, so the principle that it actually disperse one is that if it's a like called a solid rock, rod, inserted in a sabot usually, and if it hits a tank, there's an enormous amount of pressure and heat, and some of the uranium then evaporates, and then this disperses as aerosol. And then the tank crews or the soldiers or the civilians later on can breathe in this toxic mixture. And it is not only radioactive, like I said, because you cannot 100% clear it of radioactive material. The material itself is toxic and carcinogenic. So if you inhale, or if this inhale this dust or powder or so on, or eat it in the form of on the ground, on in vegetables and so on, and then it goes on your body, and whatever is inside your body is very difficult for the body to counter. That's why you have a skin, and you have warning systems, and you have filters in your nose and so on, and that's why and your stomach still has a barrier. But once it gets into your bloodstream, the defense of the body is not that good. It's like prevention is better than cure, if you want to call it like that. And if you have one particle that you ingest or gets into your body, then that one radioactive particle is sufficient enough or energetic enough to create mutation and convert a healthy cell into a cancerous cell. And this has been proven over and over again in Yugoslavia or Serbia during the NATO bombing. It is very evident in Iraq. There's multiple cases that have been proven, which the West doesn't want to acknowledge. So if you haven't heard about it, then It just was blanked out in the West. But there is no denying the effect of depleted uranium. And now, Britain says it wants to help the Ukrainians and the Ukrainian population. And how they're going to help? By contaminating the soil. And we know that Ukraine is a agricultural rich country. So it doesn't matter how you argue it, that depleted uranium will get into the soil and contaminate it for millions of let's call it thousands of years. So Britain is not really helping the Ukrainians. And secondly, there are alternative ammunition available. You don't need depleted uranium. There is a technology like other penetrators made from titanium or so that is, or other hard steels that is more than capable of destroying a tank. So there is never a necessity for this type of ammunition. But it's a good way to get rid of your nuclear waste. But in any case, so Britain has now confirmed it. And Putin has warned about it. Sorry, I'm going to sneeze. And Britain is arguing. Putin is warning. Britain is downplaying it. Putin is warning. And nobody gets the message. And I don't understand. It doesn't matter what Britain says it is. It is how Putin and Russia perceives it. So if those two don't agree, then Russia will react because he perceives it as a nuclear threat. He considers it as the first, call it, shot of nuclear material. And that's how we're going to see it. And that's how we're going to support whatever decision he takes in the future. So it doesn't matter what the British say, whether they say it's toxic or not toxic or whatever, it is a red flag for the Russians. And then Putin actually now reacted. And on Thursday, he announced that Russia is now completing a facility in Belarus for the storage of nuclear weapons, not missiles, nuclear weapons. So I believe it's something like tactical nuclear weapons or something similar to the American B-60 or bomb that's going to be dropped from an aircraft. And Putin then specifically stated that this delivery, which is supposed to be finished in June, is a direct response to the British delivery of the intended delivery of Britain's what are you talking about this? I'm really getting Alzheimer. Sorry. Depleted uranium. Now, whether that is true or not, that if you are preparing a facility, it takes some time. And I think they have already started with that because Lukashenko in Belarus has been asking for Russian nuclear ammunition or bombs or equipment for a long time. And so I think that wasn't planning. So I think Putin just made use of it. Or he wasn't decided yet and now has confirmed that it will do it and go ahead with the storage of the nuclear ammunition or bombs in Belarus itself. But what it also is, it is a sign of escalation. It is just like the West doesn't understand the enemy, Russia. They just don't want to listen to Russia. they're not considering the actions, possible action or counter actions to their behavior. So they just think that Russia will not react or will limitedly react, and that they can get away whatever what they want to do. Now remember, we first only had very old weapons delivered to Ukraine. All the surplus material from the old Warsaw Pact countries, because Ukraine had these weapons and the ammunition, and they knew how to use it, and so forth and so forth. And then the West ran out of, they ran out of that ammunition, or limited, or was too much destroyed. And then they slowly decided to get some of their old stock and send it to Ukraine. That was a slight escalation. And then it went on, and then they supplied some more modern weapons, which were still antique, but still more modern. Another escalation. And then finally we had the no-no of the tanks, and that no-no turned into a yes, and we had the tanks delivery. And then there was a no on aircraft delivery. And that, it seems to me, has also been turned. Slovakia and Poland is going to deliver all of their old MiG-29s to Ukraine. And then we have now this depleted uranium. And every time Russia has warned NATO on what not to do and what is red lines. And it seems to me that they are walking into this trap without realizing it. And it's just going to escalate. But this is not the only thing I actually wanted to talk about this nuclear thing. Because Russia has warned previously that any aircraft that is delivered from another country is a legitimate target. And the question was always, and remember, Poland wanted to deliver their MiG-29s a long time ago, but they wanted to give it to the Americans and Ramstein, and from there on transport it or whatever, fly it to Ukraine. But the issue was always that they shouldn't fly it out, because if they fly it out of Poland or Germany or wherever, that airport becomes a target, a possible target for Russia. And Russia has warned about this. And here we hear now, again, a total escalation without considering what was said, blindly just being idiotic and doing it. And he said that on Thursday, Ukrainian pilots went to Slovakia. 4 of their MiG-29s were handed over to the Ukrainian pilots, and the Ukrainian pilots flew those MiG-29s from Slovakian airport across the border into Ukraine. Something which the Russians has warned not to do. And they haven't done it once, they have done it multiple times over the last year. But again, it doesn't seem to me that NATO considers their actions properly or the effect of them properly. Again, I also would like to refer to the Reaper drone. The Reaper drone was a line in the sand. America has done it for a long time, for a whole year, and the Russians didn't react. And now after a year, they reacted and down the Reaper drone. That was a red line. That was basically a line in the sand. And now we have the depleted uranium ammunition, a violation. Doesn't care what the Russians think. And then we have the violation of the MiG-29s being flown out of another country into Ukraine. Another provocation. So the question is whether Russia will react to that or not. That is a debatable point. At the end of the day, nobody wants an escalation of the war. Nobody wants a final war between Russia and NATO. But Russia is prepared to do it. Russia is prepared to go that far. The question is, the proverbial, how much water must still run into the sea before Russia says, that's it. The red line has been crossed. Because nobody in the West is listening. And for me, this depleted uranium and this flying of the MiG-29s is a seriously escalation of the conflict. The conflict, which everybody says, might turn into a nuclear confrontation. Something that nobody wants. If nobody wants it, then why are they provoking the Russians? Why are they so stupid to do it? Can't they think for themselves? Are they not prepared to consider anybody else's view? I don't know. Well, today is actually Sunday, so it's 3 or 4 days gone after this. I think the Russians might observe what is happening. They might, for now, leave the 4 MiGs as it is. There's supposed to come another, I think, 6 from Slovakia, plus 2 frames, and there's supposed to come another 12 from Poland. I think that if the next batch is flown out of Slovakia or Poland, then I believe the Russians will react and make a point. But this is an escalation that is a no-no, a big, big no-no. So, red flags are going up. I always thought that it won't be possible, but if the West is making such stupid moves, then, well, then we're going to have it. In any case, I thought I'll bring you this information. So, the usual rhyme. And until next time, cheers.